Rick Dalton, you're under arrest for trespassing and attempted unlawful entry. Put your hands behind your back. When I bought this house, I promised myself I was finished with HOAs forever. No more ridiculous fines, no more nosy neighbors measuring my grass height, and absolutely no self-appointed enforcers acting like they own the neighborhood. I double-checked everything, made absolutely certain my property was outside their boundaries. Freedom, peace, and privacy. That's what I was paying for. But apparently, that's something certain people just can't tolerate because directly across the street sat the Willow Creek HOA run by Denise Harlow, a woman with exactly the kind of attitude you'd expect from someone who treated a clipboard like a scepter. And she had backup, a guy named Rick Dalton, the so-called HOA Cop. Before we get into it, drop a comment telling us which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. Rick wore a black vest with HOA Cop printed on it, complete with a cheap-looking badge, a radio that wasn't even functional, and a completely fake sense of authority. For weeks, he'd cruise around in his white HOA patrol truck circling my property like a predator. I tried ignoring him at first until that Saturday morning. I was repairing the backyard fence when I heard it, the metallic jingle of keys. Then a click. That sound had no business being there. My heart dropped. I rushed around the corner, and sure enough, there he stood. Rick, right on my porch, messing with a ring of keys in my front door lock. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I yelled. He barely glanced at me. "Routine inspection, sir. Authorized by HOA President Harlow." "Like hell it is," I shot back. "I'm not even in your HOA." He didn't even flinch. Just tried another key. This time, the lock stuck. He grumbled something and shook his head. I moved closer. "Let me make this crystal clear, buddy. What you're doing right now, that's criminal trespass under Penal Code 30.05. And if you try forcing your way in, it becomes attempted burglary." He finally turned around. That cocky grin still plastered on his face. "We've implemented new enforcement policies. President Harlow says all properties within community view fall under HOA supervision. You'll need to hand over your house key for inspection compliance. If you refuse, you'll be fined up to $1,000. I actually burst out laughing. "You want me to hand you my key to avoid a bogus fine? You must have completely lost your mind." He stood up straighter, tapping the fake badge on his vest. "Your choice, sir. But refusing to comply will result in penalties." I pulled out my phone and started filming. "Here's your choice. Leave right now, or I'm calling the sheriff and having you arrested for impersonating a law enforcement officer. You're not a cop, and this isn't your property." That wiped the smirk right off his face. He mumbled something about checking with headquarters and marched back to his truck. But I wasn't finished. 10 minutes later, I walked straight across the street to Denise Harlow's house. She opened the door with that phony sugary smile people wear when they know they're in the wrong. "Denise," I said, holding up my phone. "Tell your fake cop to stay off my property. He just tried to unlock my front door." She gasped, acting shocked. "Oh, that must be some kind of misunderstanding. He's just ensuring compliance." "Compliance?" I snapped. "I'm not in your HOA. You set foot on my porch again, and the next visitor will be the police." Her smile disappeared. "You'll regret defying us," she hissed quietly. I leaned in closer. "No, Denise. You'll regret trying to enforce laws that don't even exist." She slammed the door, and I headed back home, knowing one thing for certain. This wasn't finished. Because people like Denise Harlow don't quit when they're proven wrong. They escalate. And next time, I had a strong feeling things were going to get a whole lot messier. A week went by after that confrontation with Rick Dalton, the self-proclaimed HOA cop. I figured maybe my warning had finally gotten through to him. But people like him and Denise Harlow don't back down. They regroup. And that Saturday morning, they returned with a vengeance. I was in the garage swapping out a tire on my truck when I spotted his white HOA enforcement vehicle parked across the street again. Engine running. No clipboard this time. Just him staring at my house like a hawk perched on a wire. It made my gut turn. 15 minutes later, I heard it again. The unmistakable metallic click of a key. My blood went cold. He was back. I grabbed my phone and ran toward the porch. But before I made it to the door, I stopped dead. The sound of the lock turning was different this time. Sharper, cleaner. The key was actually working. By the time I rushed out, the door had opened an inch, and Rick's smug face appeared in the opening. But what he saw inside made him freeze solid. Standing just past the threshold was my wife, Lisa, still in her full sheriff's uniform. She'd just gotten home from an overnight shift, badge shining, sidearm holstered, and in one hand a sealed arrest warrant she'd picked up from the station that morning for Rick Dalton, the self-proclaimed HOA cop. In other words, for him. The expression on Rick's face was absolutely priceless. Somewhere between total disbelief and pure terror. Lisa didn't even need to raise her voice. "Sir," she said firmly, "do you understand that you are attempting to enter a private residence without consent?" Rick stuttered. I'm with the HOA Enforcement Division authorized under President Harlow's inspection order." Lisa's tone remained calm. "That's not an inspection order. That's trespassing and attempted unlawful entry under Texas Penal Code 30.05 and 30.04. And that badge on your vest, if it's fake, that's impersonating a peace officer under 37.11. Rick froze solid, the color draining from his face. "Ma'am, there's been a misunderstanding." "Yeah," Lisa said, cutting him off. "The misunderstanding is you thinking you have any authority here." I finally moved up behind him, recording everything. "You were warned, Rick. You remember that, don't you? I told you last week what would happen." Rick started backing away from the porch, hands shaking, muttering, "I was just following orders. President Harlow said this property's noncompliance was a safety hazard." Lisa took one step forward, eyes locked on him. "If you move another inch toward that door, I will detain you." The crowd began gathering again, neighbors whispering, filming with their phones. Some gasped when they recognized her uniform. Rick turned pale. "You can't arrest me. I'm enforcing community law." Lisa smirked slightly. "There's no such thing as community law, Rick. There's state law, and you just violated it." Then she reached for her radio and calmly called it in. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Lawson. I've got a suspect attempting forced entry at my residence, claiming HOA authority, requesting backup for trespass and impersonation." Within minutes, 2 sheriff's cruisers arrived, lights flashing. Rick tried explaining himself, rambling about HOA orders and inspection authority, but the deputies weren't buying it. They handcuffed him and sat him on the curb. Across the street, Denise Harlow appeared in her bathrobe, yelling across the lawn, "This is harassment." He was doing his job. Lisa didn't even glance her way. "Ma'am, step back before you join him in custody." Denise fell silent. Rick sat there red-faced, mumbling that he was just following directions. But deep down, he knew he was finished because pretending to be a cop on camera while breaking into a deputy's home, that's not an HOA fine. That's a felony. And watching his fake authority collapse under real law, that was justice in its truest form. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, hit that like button and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. When the sheriff's cruisers drove away that morning, leaving tire marks on my driveway and a crowd of shocked neighbors behind, I thought it was finished. But it was only the start. Because when a fake HOA cop gets busted breaking into a deputy's home, one outside the HOA, the consequences hit harder than a sledgehammer on glass. By the following afternoon, the county sheriff's office confirmed what I already suspected. Rick Dalton wasn't a cop, wasn't licensed for security work, and wasn't authorized by any legitimate HOA enforcement program. His badge was decommissioned, his citation pad was counterfeit, and his white HOA compliance truck, just his personal pickup with vinyl decals he'd bought online. President Denise Harlow didn't fare much better. Her email emerged showing she'd authorized Rick to conduct random inspections and enforce compliance by any means necessary. Those 5 words became her downfall. 3 days later, the district attorney filed charges. Rick Dalton, criminal trespass, impersonating a peace officer, and attempted burglary. Denise Harlow conspiracy to commit trespass and misuse of HOA authority. Their HOA board held an emergency meeting, not in their fancy clubhouse, but in the park since nobody wanted Denise near HOA property again. When I showed up as a guest, I didn't need to say a word. The neighbors did it for me. "You sent a fake cop to break into his house." One man yelled. Another woman shouted, "He doesn't even live in the HOA, Denise." She tried to stay composed, clutching her binder of bylaws like armor. "You don't understand. He wasn't supposed to get caught." And that's when she realized she'd revealed too much. The board voted 9-0 to remove her as president effective immediately. She stormed off, red-faced, screaming threats of lawsuits. Nobody followed. A week later, sentencing came down hard. Rick pleaded guilty. 2 years in county jail, $15,000 in fines, and 3 years probation. Denise got a 1-year suspended sentence, $9,500 in penalties, and a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board in the state. Rick's mugshot made the news. Fake HOA cop arrested for breaking into deputy's home outside HOA jurisdiction. I got my peace back. No fake fines, no idling engines at dawn. Just quiet mornings with my wife sipping coffee on the porch. Sometimes neighbors still ask, "Did that guy really try to unlock your door?" I just smile. Yeah, now he's unlocking his jail cell.